Hi, I'm Femi OK. You're in the stream live on Al Jazeera English and YouTube. The Me Too campaign has ignited conversations around the world about sexual harassment, assault and rape. Over the past 2 weeks, women have been sharing their experiences online, in homes, in offices and in schools. And while some have criticised the campaign as little more than armchair activism, it has encouraged men to talk more about accountability and their role. Here's Malika Bilal, who's been following the online discussion.
That's right, I mean, as you can see, it is a global movement. So women around the world have been opening up with their stories of sexual assault and harassment using the hashtag #MeToo. Now, the hashtag has spurred conversations online among women and men calling for accountability. It's prompted many men to respond with, "How I will change." As Philip tweets, "Men, keep in mind, women don't owe us their stories for us to become advocates for them in public and private spaces." Women are also using the hashtag to talk back to men. Mona says, "Men, when the women in your life tell you what happened to them, they need to hear, 'I believe you.'" How I will change has prompted some men to even confess their role as aggressors with their own hashtags like "It was me," "I have," "I did that," and "I did it too." And some are discussing ways to prevent sexual harassment. We asked a few men how they would like to change the idea of masculinity. Here's what they told us.
In all honesty, masculinity as a construct has gone too far and done too much damage.
Instead of keeping the focus on women, the way they dress, etc., we should be focusing on how we view masculinity and how the fetishism of masculinity leads to this aggressive behavior.
Men need to understand that it's okay to have feelings, that emotions are all right, they're not bad, that showing vulnerability does not make you weak, it doesn't make you lesser.
To ensure a truly equitable society, I believe the ideals of masculinity should be abandoned altogether, rather than the perception of it simply changed, because to do so would be essentially rebranding, which would be a band-aid solution.
Joining us now, Jackson Katz. He's the author of The Macho Paradox and co-founder of Mentors in Violence Prevention. And Devang Pathak is an Indian writer. Gents, it's good to have you here. I feel my shortcomings today because I want to talk about men, and I'm obviously using my female voice. So I actually terrorised the men in my office, my friends, my colleagues who are guys, and asked them about this topic. And they said, one of the hardest things to do is to actually say, "I've done that. I did that." Devang, the reason you're on this show is because you actually just stepped up and said, "You know what? There was this one time when..." What happened, Devang?
So I got in touch with an acquaintance again. We met. She was talking about some of the things she was going through in her life. And what happened then was I started feeling a strange sensation. I started feeling as if I had some power over her and that she was vulnerable in some ways. We met again a few months later, and the feeling was back when I met her. But this time, when I let that impulse take control of me, I actually reached a point where I asked her if I could kiss her on the cheeks. She said no, and I strangely felt relieved, because all the while I was having that feeling, I was feeling sick somewhere inside. Like no one had to tell me what I was doing was wrong.
Jason, what do you make of guys stepping up and saying, "This is my story, I would like to do better"? What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, I think we need a lot more from men than we've been getting. I mean, the Me Too hashtag has given us the opportunity for men to both hear and experience and be empathetic about women's experience and then figure out what they can do about it. I don't think that it's, for men, I don't think that it's going to be the confessional piece. I mean, I appreciate Devang telling his story and other men who are willing to honestly talk about how they've participated in of sexism. I have, everybody that I know has. But I think the question is really, what are we going to do beyond confessing our sins, if you will? What are men going to do in male culture to try to transform the attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors of all of us and the institutional practices that contribute to this ongoing problem? That's, to me, the question. I don't think it's realistic that we're going to have a huge number of men confessing abusive behavior, but acknowledging, yes, that we've been men in sexist and patriarchal societies, therefore we've been acting out in ways that are perpetuating problems, and then what's the next step?
So I hear what you're saying there, Jackson, but I want to share a couple of comments we got live on YouTube. One person says, why is it always men who are being held accountable? Another person, this is Connor, who writes it on YouTube, I'm not going to apologize for the actions of a small minority of men. So Jackson, not everyone in our community, and I would venture not everyone in the world who is a man, thinks that they have a role to play in this conversation or in this campaign. What do you say to them?
I would say to them the same thing that I would say to a white person who's talking about racism. Not all white people enact racist behaviors, but all white people benefit from certain structures that privilege white people. I would say in colonial context, if you're a person who's from a global North country with lots of power and wealth, and you say, well, I'm not really the one who's oppressing people in the global South, so it's not really my issue. I would say that's very similar to a man saying, well, because I personally don't enact specific behaviors of abuse, that somehow I'm not either benefiting from it or it's not really my issue. I think that's an evasion of responsibility and accountability. And I think we need more men who are willing to say, yeah, maybe I myself am a good guy and maybe I haven't done these horrible behaviors, but I am a man and I'm in a position as a man to challenge other men, to create a new normal among men where this kind of behavior is unacceptable, even if I myself don't see myself as having engaged in the most egregious forms of sexism or misogyny.
So Michael, Devang, go ahead.
I seem to agree with what Jackson has said, because to take an example from ever since whatever has happened in Hollywood 3 weeks back, how it has come down and percolated in India, we have a situation where there is a venue which was called out 2 weeks back for objectifying women, for allegation of sexual harassment against the owner, and the majority of the reaction of the men seemed to be similar as the comment. It said, I have been there, it's never happened to me. My friends have been there, it's never happened to me. There was a vast number of accusations by different women from different backgrounds coming out against this one venue, but there was still this denial. And that's a part of a male privilege which people just don't seem to accept, especially in India.
Let me share this with you, gents. Michael says, men simply need to respect boundaries. Women need to understand biology. And then our team said, what do you mean by biology, Michael? Michael clarified, it is natural for men to look and evaluate boundaries, meant to keep a hands-off approach, polite speech as well. Jackson, again, me channeling my male colleagues, one of the things that they notice happens in the workplace is men looking at women. Sometimes it's a little flick, sometimes it's a more lingering look. What do you do about that?
Well, I mean, again, I don't think that the challenge here is men looking at women or heterosexually oriented men who find women attractive. I think it's when men cross lines and sexualize environments that are not sexual, treat women as sexual objects of their desire rather than as colleagues and as friends. I mean, it's situational. It doesn't. We're not saying that men can't be sexual beings or men can't be heterosexual men can't be attracted to women. It's when your behavior crosses a line from, you're not in a club, you're not in a romantic interlude, you're in the workplace, you're in a place where people are acting as professionals, and when you treat women like, in a non-professional way, in a professional context, then you're undermining their strength, you're undermining their integrity. And I think a lot of men know that they're crossing a line. I think maybe some men don't. Maybe there's some muddy territory once in a while. But when we're talking about sexual harassment, we're talking about repeated, unwelcome, and unwanted behavior, not just one time, a glance that somebody caught. I think some men exaggerate and they say, well, I can't even talk to women in the workplace. I can't even have a conversation because I'm afraid that I'm going to be accused of sexual harassment. I think that's really a dramatic overstatement. I think women just want to be treated with respect and dignity in the workplace when they're going about their jobs and when they're going about their professional lives. And I think smart men, thoughtful men can adjust to that and treat them accordingly.
So Jackson, you mentioned muddy territory, and I'd say let's wade into that territory because we got a couple of tweets about joking. So this is Daniel. He's giving us an example of what happened to him. And Devang, I'll pass this over to you. He tweets in, "How I will change. I let my lover get harassed in my house by my roommate and I did nothing about it. I'm sorry and it will never happen again." He goes on to say, "Honestly, I thought it was harmless joking at the time. What I didn't realize was how she truly felt, and that's what I should have realized." And his last tweet here says, "Understanding every situation is different, but if the victim feels a certain way, it should be treated as such. It's not about you, it's about them." So Devang, have you been in a situation where people say they're just joking, but the receiving end of that joke doesn't take it that way?
I think it's always been about, I think that's the excuse which everyone gives, from online conversations to the offline ones. I've been lucky to be close to a number of my female friends, and the things they share with you, it goes beyond jokes. Like, that is where it shocks you, the things that they have to go through when they're walking, taking a walk near their own house, they're going for work, and the things that they have to face, and the way when they tell me immediately, there's no part of me which goes, no, that's okay, that cannot happen, because I have to truly believe it, because I can see it in their face. If they're in front of me, I can hear it in their voice that it truly did happen. The other thing about, oh, they're going to censor us, we can't flirt with women anymore, we have to be mindful about how we behave. Yes, you have to be mindful about how you behave, because that's a very small cost in terms of what we are talking about. It's the burden of discomfort which has been there around this entire conversation, which has been placed on women single-handedly, now needs to be on men, because it's on us. This is what prompted me to put up that post, because someone pointed it out. It cannot be just about women coming and saying Me Too. It has to be about, because for every Me Too, there is someone who did something somewhere, who either ignored something or he actually was an active participant in something. So that is my point of view. I don't think these complaints which men have right now, that we need to watch ourselves, are fair. You have to watch yourselves. That's the least thing you can do.
Jadson, there's a quote of yours that's been going around, particularly in the wake of this Me Too campaign. It's a quote about another kind of world that we could possibly live in and how we use language. Nim actually posted this. It got shared 140,000 likes, 77,000 retweets, and then some. Can you paraphrase this idea about the language? Because it really resonated with many people.
Sure, Femi. I've been, writing and speaking for a long time about the need for a paradigm shift, a new conceptual framework about sexual assault and harassment and abuse. Most people see these issues as women's issues that good men help out with, and I'm trying to say that they're really men's issues. One of the ways that we stay in the old paradigm is through our use of language. So you'll hear people say things like, they'll ask questions like, how many women were raped last year, rather than how many men raped women, or how many girls were sexually harassed in the school district, rather than how many boys sexually harassed girls, or we'll say how many teenage girls in this country got pregnant last year, rather than how many men and boys impregnated teenage girls. In each case, the use of passive language has a very powerful political effect, and the effect is that it shifts our focus off of the group with more power onto the group with less. And so we end up victim blaming or talking about what girls and women are doing, because the very language that we use keeps our attention and pushes our attention off of men. Even the term violence against women is a term that's problematic because it's passive. No one's really doing it to them. Violence against women is a bad thing that happens to women, but nobody's actually causing it to happen. So if you say men's violence against women, it's actually more accurate and it's more honest. And then when you have subsequent discussions about it, if you start naming men, if you start using active language, then when we talk about solutions, the solutions won't be victim blaming solutions like what can women do, how can they dress better, how can they comport themselves better, but rather, how can we stop men from acting in these ways? How can we socialize boys differently to treat women with respect and dignity? It'll turn the spotlight back around onto men and boys and the cultures that produce them.
So for all the gentlemen and the young boys watching this, or anyone who's categorized themselves as an abuser, what would you two gents suggest that they do? Let me just give you a little lift off here for that part of the conversation. Viva says, how I will change is a catalyst to evoke conversations on the impact of harassment and sexual assault and an inspiration to promote change. Jackson, I think you might want to say, well, I told you so, because you've been doing this for a very long time. But your passing thought is what? Your last thought is what?
I think we need more men who have the courage to not just be introspective. Introspection is important, and think about how we've contributed to the problem in our own behavior and sometimes in our own attitudes and sexist attitudes. But I think we need more men who are willing to break our complicit silence and challenge and interrupt other men when they act out in sexist ways. I think the sort of one of the dirty little secrets of masculinities around the world is that men are afraid of each other. Men are afraid of losing social approval from other men. Men are afraid of being seen as soft other men. We need more men who have the courage and the strength to stand with women as our partners and allies and say to other men, look, as a man, I'm not going to be silent in the face of your sexism or my own. I have the courage of my convictions. I believe in justice and fairness and nonviolence. I believe women should be treated with respect, and I'm going to stand for that. And I'm going to stand up for that. And if you call me names, like pretend that somehow I'm not a real man, I'm going to persist anyways, because it's the right thing to do.
Jackson and Devang, we're going to leave it there for now. Thank you very much for being part of the stream today. Malika, what do you have?
Well, the Me Too campaign has inspired dozens of smaller campaigns in different languages around the world. Take a look. That last hashtag you just saw, Yo Tambien, has reignited a conversation that's been happening in Mexico and Latin America for more than 2 years now, around the Ni Una Menos campaign. Not One Woman Less is an Argentine feminist movement that spread across several Latin American countries and campaigns against gender-based violence. And as Yo Tambien gets louder, Ni Una Menos has also seen a bump. Cervantes writes, the fact that these hashtags exist should be enough to understand that harassment, machismo, and danger are real and prevailing. Jacqueline tweets, I have also been harassed, and I have also felt afraid, helpless, and angry every time I go out into the street. Adriana says, the liberty to harass does not exist. We have the right to be respected, not for being a woman, but for being a person. And Belinda Torres expressed her disappointment in at least one woman's attitude.
Puede haber un agresor absolutamente sano y de repente en un momento la mujer lo saca de contexto diciéndole me voy o te estoy traicionando. Esas palabras, esas frases nunca deben ser usadas por una mujer porque podrían sin querer queriendo motivar o exacerbar los ánimos de una persona normal.
With us now from Mexico City, Catalina Ruiz Navarro is editor-in-chief of Volcanica magazine. Catalina, it's good to have you here. About a year ago, you came up with a hashtag campaign. The translation is My First Harassment. So when Me Too started to go global, you must have thought, what? I was doing that a year ago. Tell us about your campaign and how that took off.
Well, I think that feminism enriches itself when we have conversations or we copy strategies from other countries. Because in 2015, feminist Juliana de Faria did a campaign like this called Meu Primer Asedio, but we missed it because it was in Portuguese. But it was quite a trend in Brazil during that year. And we did it again after a long conversation we had in Mexico City with a lot of cases that came into social media, then went viral, and then very organically, a march was organized in a Facebook group. And the day before, I launched the same exercise, but in Spanish, Mi Primer Acoso. And I told my first harassment. That was when I was 7 years old and came back from school, and the doorman will carry my books until the door of the apartment. And meanwhile, they would open, he would breathe in my face like this distance. I was told that if a man touched me, that was harassment, and he wasn't touching me, so I never said anything. But one of the problems we have had in language when we talk about harassment is that we never talk about how women feel. You can say mi amor to somebody, and you will feel feel welcomed and something and warmth. Or you can say mi amor, and you can feel so disgusting by the way he's looking at you or the tone in which he says it. So it's not something in words. In Latin America, we are stereotyped as like very romantic and passionate. And yes, you can do that, and you can be creative, and you can fall in love. But shouting to a woman that's walking on the street, great tits, or whispering filthy things into on the ear of somebody that works for you, that is not flirting, and that is not seduction. That is just plain harassment and violence.
Now, Catalina, you mentioned how women feel is one of the things that people should take into account. We got this comment via YouTube where people are watching the show live right now. Donsful says, how can we discuss these issues without victims being re-victimized, especially keeping in mind that many people are sharing their stories online with these hashtags, but then they go out in there to the internet and there's no real safe space once the stories are there. What would you say to Donsful?
Well, women, we don't have safe spaces, not in our house, nor in our offices, nor in the streets, nor in the internet. So that happens everywhere. But the fact that each of us is telling our stories of harassment makes it a little safer space, because we don't feel alone, we don't feel like damaged goods, we don't feel guilty, we don't feel that this is something that we brought upon us. When we see that this happens to every single woman since like powerful Angelina Jolie to meaningful you understand that this is something that's structural and that is happening to every woman you know. And this brings us to an ugly truth. If every woman has been harassed since we are kids, since we were like 7 years old, that means that a very important number, a very huge majority of men have harassed, and we are not talking about them. So I'm glad we're taking this topic on in this program.
So, Catalina, you have a breakdown of men in this sort of sexual harassment sphere and who plays what role. And your breakdown,
yes,
you've taken from a little clip of the United States president that was made available last year. Let me play a little sliver of that clip, and then you can do the breakdown of where men are in terms of the role they play. So do you remember last October when Donald Trump was a candidate for US president of the United States? And this is what happened. This was what became available and was released. Have a listen, have a look.
Unguarded moment he's recorded talking about women in vulgar terms.
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
So just to remind people, Catalina, this was behind the scenes. This was a microphone that was still live on a TV entertainment show. So you have the TV host, you have Donald Trump before he was president many years ago. And you do a breakdown of who the men are in this scenario.
Sort of conversations. Yeah. There's a huge problem with masculinity is that men bond through objectifying women. So they come together and the first thing they find in common is, let's talk about that ass. So you have, and they play many roles. You have the Donald Trumps that would act it out aggressively and brag about it. You have the Billy Bushes of the world that will be snickering and laughing and enabling this attitude. And then you have the person that was taping this, that was probably a silent man that was listening to this, doing nothing. And most of the time, men who just laugh or do nothing feel they have nothing to do with the problem. Whereas you see their groups of only men in WhatsApp, they're filled with porn. Why do men have to do this? Can't they make friends any other way that is not through porn and through objectifying women in ways that can actually kill us?
So Catalina, taking that into mind, and of course Trump said that was locker room talk. This is what Al Luna said on Twitter. I believe the toughest challenge is to overcome the assigned roles that women have in the macho LATAM culture. So she's talking about LATAM culture. It's of course other places, but in just about 15 seconds, what can we do? What's that first step to combating that?
Women in Latin America have a lot of power in their households, but we are bringing this power to support patriarchy. All of these mothers that have so much power in their families, if they would wake to feminism and embrace it, they could use all the power that Latin American women have to liberate us. Empowering us is not enough. We are already empowered. What we need is liberation and find our own goals and stop taking this bullshit. We have to just confront it right away.
The straight-talking, very candid Catalina Ruiz Navarro, thank you so much for being part of our program. Also, Jackson Katz, Devang Pathak, we appreciate you too. We are live on YouTube right now, and you can see us and watch us in the future on YouTube. Just look for Al Jazeera's YouTube live stream page. Thanks for watching, everybody.